I really wanted to like this show, and at first I did, but hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna be talking about a show called The Beast in Me. That's a Netflix show that apparently stars two very popular actors that I don't really remember their names, so I'm not going to try and remember their names. Maybe I'll put them here. But anyways, I had this show in my watch list since it came out, or like I did like the remind me thing for Netflix. But then like I kept putting it off to watch it. And then I saw someone on my Instagram page say how good this show was. So I decided to watch it, and boy, oh boy, was I disappointed, okay? So I am a lover of mysteries and thrillers, and so I really went into The Beast in Me really wanting to enjoy it. I feel like Netflix has been releasing like a lot of dark, psychological type thrillers, whether that's movies or shows. And I felt like maybe this was going to be one of those slow burn thrillers that kind of quietly messes with your head. And I feel like that's kind of how it started off, but it didn't really go there. For the first part of the show, I was genuinely intrigued. The atmosphere was heavy, the tone was dark. It felt like something was happening underneath the surface that us as viewers and some of the characters didn't really know about. So I'll kind of recap a little bit what The Beast in Me is about. So pretty much there is a writer. Her name is Agatha Wiggs. And her son passed away in a car accident some time ago. It was a young son she had, and it was due to a drunk driver. At least that's what, it's prefaced as. That's what we think it is. We kind of learn later on in the show that it wasn't necessarily that, but I'm not going to be completely talking about the entire show here, just my thoughts. So we won't get into that. And so she divorces from her partner, and then she moves. Well, she's already moved, but she's in this kind of like suburban part of New York, and that's where she lives. And then we have this realtor guy who's part of this big realtor family, who also ends up moving there. But the catch is he is actually heavily suspected of murdering his wife some time ago. The two of them meet. Initially, it's not the best meetup, but gradually they become sort of acquaintances. Well, at least on Niall's part, that's the guy's name. He kind of feels like they are friends slash acquaintances. Agatha ends up writing, starts to write a book about him. And throughout this process, she is pretty much going to him and interviewing him. There are some things that happen throughout the show that gradually make her more and more suspicious slash scared of him, because I think she was always suspicious of him. But yeah, and we won't get too much into it if you want to watch the show. However, I felt like as, the episodes went on, I kind of realized that the story wasn't really building towards much, if anything at all. It's like I kept waiting for that moment for when everything clicks into place, and it just never came. By the end of the show, I wasn't confused or shocked. I was just really bored. Like, I was so dissatisfied with the ending of this show. I even was like down to the last couple of minutes of this show. I'm like, okay, something is going to be revealed that is going to shock me, and nothing happened. And I kind of felt like I wasted a little bit of my time watching this. So, what initially worked for me was the concept of the show. Again, I'm really into these types of shows. It kind of seemed like maybe the show was going to be exploring certain topics psychologically, trauma, that kind of played into, the thrill slash the mystery of the show. I even thought maybe there was going to be some hidden truth about one or a few more of the characters that we would find out. And though there were some hidden truths, I didn't find any of these truths really that appealing at all. There was nothing that made me go, "Oh my gosh, what's going on here?" There are two characters in the show where I feel like we think that, or at least I thought that I was going to get way more out of them. That's the detective, or the FBI agent, and then his supervisor. And I felt like I was going to get way more out of these characters. And it turns out, I feel like I pretty much got nothing. We find out backstory about the male FBI agent, who seems like he's going to be a prominent character in the show. And he kind of like, something happens to him midway. And I feel like that was super disappointing. And then the female FBI agent, who is this guy's supervisor, like, we know that something is hidden about her that we as the audience don't know. And when we find that out, that was also quite boring. Like, it's like, okay, turns out this was what the case was, but it's like, it doesn't even really matter. I mean, I guess it does, but it's like, who cares? There was really no payoff with her character. I feel like, I don't know if it was halfway through or wherever it was in the series that we started like giving this character more screen time. And I just felt like as time went on, it was just wasted with her. Like, and I kind of felt that way, like it was going to be that way, and I was hoping it wasn't going to be that way with her, but turns out unfortunately it was, and it was very, very disappointing. With that being said, I feel like the pacing at the beginning, it did really feel intentional, and it kind of felt like, oh, maybe the writers are taking their time because they know that something bigger is coming, and I just kept waiting. Oh my goodness. The cinematography, I feel like the tone, it does a lot of the heavy lifting for this series early on, but that quickly fades out when you realize that the story isn't doing much. It's like you can't carry the whole story with just tone and cinematography. And it kind of fooled me because I'm like, everything is kind of moody, everything is kind of strange. So it makes you feel like, okay, like this is going to get dark at some point. And it's not that the show itself isn't dark, but it's like super predictable and no payoff. So the dark tone doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's like I wasn't expecting constant action at all, but I was expecting payoff, and I feel like that's an important distinction. Like, I don't care for the action. I want story, and there was really not much story. And I feel like the biggest problem, saying that is that the plot doesn't really ever evolve. I feel like a lot of the same things are happening in each episode, and every episode you're like, okay, what's going to happen next? Is this leading into something? And I just feel like there's the same plot almost every single episode. And I actually feel like this is an 8-episode series. I feel like we could have done with this being 6 episodes or maybe even a movie, to be frank. I feel like instead of escalating, the story kind of just hovers, and then you get to the last 2 episodes and that's where it kind of climaxes, but it's not very much of a climax. like I said, we revisit the same conflict over and over and over again. The same conflict with Agatha and her son. The same conflict with what's going on with the suspect murderer guy, and you know, his realtor family and all of that stuff. And yeah, we don't really, I don't really feel like we ever revisit or visit, I should say, new information or raise the stakes too much, because you kind of already know, okay, who this guy is, what he's capable of, what he's gonna do. Like, there's no other, like, there's really no true mystery here. And I feel like this was meant to be a slow burn story, as I said before. But as a show, I feel like those type of stories kind of work better when there is a little revealed, like, in every single episode. Like, this is a limited series. Give me something of substance. And instead, I feel like we're watching the same emotional beats play out just like repeatedly, and it just drags. It drags. But it's like by the midway point, I'm like invested, because I'm like, maybe there's gonna be some payoff. I don't want to regret it if I just stopped watching it and then like there's this grand thing that happens by the end. And it's similar to when I read mystery slash thriller books, and you know, I'm expecting something by the end and it just never comes. This was exactly that. At a certain point, it kind of becomes clear that the slowness isn't necessarily intentional anymore. It's kind of just padding. You feel like there are things happening in each episode that are just filler. But then there's times where you get like, you know, over the filler, you have eerie, ominous music playing. And there are some points where you think, oh, is something bad gonna happen? Is something crazy gonna happen? And it never, ever, ever happens. You think, oh, is this conversation of significance here? And it just never is. It never is. And you know, I just started to become really impatient. And this was the most frustrating part of the entire experience of watching the show for me. I feel like the show wants you to think it's leading to a twist. And you know, like I said, they frame the scenes in that way, like it's leading to something. Like I said, lingering pauses, ominous music. It all suggests that, you know, something shocking is going to be coming right around the corner. But instead of like, you know, subverting these expectations, I feel like the story plays everything just completely straight. It doesn't ever stray. It's just like, okay, here we go. Here's this conversation here. It's not going to mean anything. We're going to just keep on trudging along. Very annoying. It's like you can predict where character arcs are going to happen, like very, very, very fairly on. There are like no moments where the show actually challenges your assumptions, or it doesn't really ever force you to reevaluate what you're seeing on the screen at that moment. It doesn't really make you think, I mean, I feel like maybe I was kind of forcing myself to think that because I wanted something to happen so badly, but it's not that necessarily anything provoked that in me. I'm just thinking, okay, there has to be something here, and there wasn't. So, you know, I just kept thinking, okay, maybe the twist is coming later. Oh, then I'm like, oh, well, you know, maybe it's going to come together in the finale. And then, you know, when it didn't, I felt like the show was teasing a payoff that it never intended for, and that just never appeared. And I feel like that's worse than being predictable. It kind of feels misleading, you know, because it's like, I can deal with something that's predictable if it's good. But when it's like predictable and it doesn't seem like, you know, that it's like kind of like you don't want it to seem like that's your intention, but that is your intention. It's so misleading and it makes me so angry. As I mentioned before, some of the characters I felt just not needed, or what they did with them wasn't enough. I feel like they fell short with them. The acting was not bad. I know I've seen some people say the acting was kind of bad, especially on the main character, Agatha's part, like her actress. Apparently she does the same thing with her face all the time. I don't know. I don't care because I didn't really know of her before this, but I don't think the acting was bad. But I feel like the writing doesn't necessarily give them enough emotionally. I don't think the characters meaningfully change from beginning to end. I mean, I know the main character kind of comes to grips with certain things that maybe she was in denial of throughout the series, but I don't necessarily feel like that was a big change. Again, super predictable. It's like I just thought that maybe there was something else going on with any character, and there wasn't, especially the main character. Their reactions, their motivations, their decisions, they kind of remain the same throughout the series. And I feel like really good psychological thrillers, the characters evolve. They reveal something new about themselves from time to time. And that's something that was not happening. We were getting flashbacks of stuff, but that's not really a reveal of a character. That's just flashbacks to fill us in as to why certain things are happening right now. I felt like the characters kind of just existed within the story instead of driving the narrative forward. And that's a big problem. You know, it's like by the end, I didn't feel connected to anyone. I didn't care at all. Like, I wasn't necessarily rooting for Agatha, and there wasn't like a reason to even root for the villain. You know, sometimes you have the villain and you're rooting for them. I didn't care for the villain either. The villain's wife, I forget what her name is, blonde girl from Pitch Perfect. She, like, again, great acting. I didn't care for her either necessarily. I actually felt like maybe there was something more that was going to be going on with her, and turns out there also wasn't. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I didn't feel connected, and I feel like that's terrible for a show that's very character driven. And, you know, it almost feels like The Beast in Me, this show wanted to say something more. Like there was something more that was supposed to be going on deeper in this show. Like they wanted to explore certain themes, you know, like maybe about human nature, inner darkness, emotional struggle. But the show just never commits to any of that. It's kind of just like, okay, this is how he is, and that's that. They kept saying throughout the show, like, something is off about him. Like, there's something wrong. You could see it in his eyes. And then it's just like, that's all you said. But we never explored it. We never went into why or what's caused this dude to be like this. It just is. It just is. It just is, and nothing else. Yeah, like, so pretty much the themes are hinted at, but they're not ever explored. It's like, oh, we're gonna put this in here because it sounds cool, but we don't got the time to explore it. It's kind of like, it doesn't dig deeper, but it just stays pretty safe and very vague throughout the series. And it just makes the watch experience very emotionally flat. Like I said, no connection to these characters, didn't care about them by the time the show ended. I feel like this had the potential to be something that lingered with you after the credits rolled. You know, when you watch something that's really good and you kind of have this like grief of, oh, it's over. None of that happened with me. Not at all. I feel like this show could have benefited from at least one creative risk. Me personally, I like at least 2 creative risks. I think the show, it's a limited series. It could have benefited from at least one creative risk. Maybe a twist that reframed the story. maybe a reveal that kind of made you look back, forced you to look back at other episodes differently, which is something that I always look for in thrillers and mysteries. Or maybe just a darker ending. A darker ending that like fully embraced the psychological tension that had been happening throughout, you know, the show. Like there's a show that I watched called Behind Her Eyes. It's I can't remember who the writer is. She's a very popular author. It's a book to show, and I remember like being invested, but kind of the same thing with this show. Invested, but still a little bored throughout like each episode. But by the time, because I hadn't read the book, by the time the last episode came around, I felt like there was this big payoff, and it made me look at all the episodes differently. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to go back and rewatch this show because now I'm so intrigued at everything I missed. It's so interesting. And I feel like that's what could have happened here. And I think they missed the mark. They missed that. It was a missed opportunity. So, you know, The Beast in Me, it's I felt like it starts with promise, but it never delivers. However, if you are into slow burn, quiet, psychological thriller dramas, you might still find something here. I'm not ever going to discourage somebody from watching something. If you want to watch it, watch it. Yeah, you might still find something there, you know? But if you're expecting suspense, if you are expecting twists and turns, explanations, you might want to skip out on this one because you're going to be disappointed. For me, I don't think it was terrible. I know it sounds like I feel it was terrible, but I don't think it was terrible. It's just very forgettable. Like I will finish this video and I will forget that I watched this. And I think that's probably the worst thing. I think that's the worst thing a thriller could be. So anyway, I am curious about what all y'all thought. If you watch this after this review or other people's reviews, will you still watch it? Did you enjoy the slow pace? Were you also waiting for something bigger to happen and just did you feel like it never came? Do you feel like it paid off? Maybe it's just me, you know? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you enjoy any honest reviews of stuff, sometimes I do spoilers. Most times I do spoilers because I like to give my thoughts and opinions on certain things. But I'll sometimes do spoiler-free stuff. But anyways, if you like reviews, please make sure to like and subscribe and check out my other videos. I truly appreciate it. But until next time, bye.